Discover how one amazing woman transformed a millionaire CEO's life in just 30 days. Sarah sat hunched over the kitchen table, surrounded by a mountain of bills that seemed to mock her every time she glanced at them. The shadows stretched across the modest home, creeping like the self-doubt that infiltrated her mind. 2 jobs, daytime waitress at the local diner and night cashier at the convenience store, provided just enough for her 2 young children. Yet every week felt heavier as she wrestled with the relentless weight of financial strain. Would today be the day she couldn't make ends meet? Could she afford the groceries and still support her son's soccer fees? The gnawing fear that crept in with the dusk almost suffocated her. As she stared down at the unopened painting supplies hidden in her closet, sadness mingled with resentment. Her mother's memory was a vibrant palette and a reminder of all the cheer that once filled her life through art. Hope flickered as she contemplated bringing her easel out again, but the reality of her daily grind snuffed it out. The air felt thick with impossibility. Just last week she had attended that community meeting about local artists, feeling the stirrings of her energy, then had to shake her head and remind herself that painting was an indulgence she could no longer afford. No time, no energy, no chance. Meanwhile, in a world lined with privilege and centered on high stakes, Michael stared out from his penthouse window, surveying his kingdom of steel and glass. The luxury car parked below, a symbol of his success, no longer filled him with satisfaction. Whispers of scandal slithered through the corridors of his mind, tightening around him, amplifying his anxiety over the impending board meeting set to unravel his empire. On impulse, he had signed up for a mentorship program his sister pushed on him, largely dismissing the idea, but it was advised by the higher-ups. A begrudging commitment to help a struggling single parent felt inconsequential. Yet there was Sarah, a whirlwind of determination, yet so dismissive of her own worth. A clash of worlds, and he felt the tension ripple between them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their meetings were a battlefield. Michael struggled to conceal his disdain for small-town life. Sarah held on tightly to unyielding pride, yet craved acceptance from the very person who dismissed her reality. Each session began with the same electricity, a volatile mix of irritation and intrigue, a mining of vulnerabilities on both sides that had begun to carve different paths in their lives. As Michael listened to Sarah share tales of stifled dreams, he found himself ensnared by the nuances of her struggle. What did success truly mean? But as Sarah's artistic spirit began to resurface, her growing confidence ignited a fierce pride. Yet a nagging voice clawed at her. Was her talent worthy of the canvas? Would it validate her, at least momentarily, as she balanced between dreams and necessity? Out of the shadows, her own fears began to creep in, tarnishing her rediscovered passion with every stroke of hesitation. Michael faced the unsettling realization that the scandal was bearing down on him like a freight train. Would he sacrifice his principles to preserve everything he had forged? With Sarah's brightening future came personal demons. The closer they became, the more he feared losing her. The clock was ticking, and as pressures mounted, the fragile threads of their lives entwined tighter, threatening to snap under the weight of ambition and moral obligation. The path ahead was fraught with peril, leaving both to confront a reality they neither anticipated nor could escape. Would they emerge together, or would it all come crashing down? As days turned to weeks, Sarah found herself embarking on a flickering journey of self-discovery, carefully balancing her daily grind with the exhilarating itch to paint. Every stolen moment away from waiting tables or scanning groceries was imbued with an electric pulse, an opportunity to breathe life into the colors once nestled in her dreams. In those brief interludes, the clutter of bills faded, replaced by an internal symphony of brush against canvas. Perhaps she could embrace her talent after all.
It wouldn't turn her fortunes overnight, but it brought her closer to the semblance of fulfillment she'd missed for so long. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Sarah unwrapped her brushes and splashed paint across the canvas with a surge of energy she hadn't felt in years. The vibrations of the world outside melted away, each stroke coaxing her confidence to rise like a tide after years of being held back. It was intoxicating. Slowly, she began to see possibilities rather than limitations, a possibility of selling her pieces, of carving out a niche for herself, even if only through a local gallery. But that hopeful exuberance triggered a volley of self-doubt. As she stood before her half-finished painting one night, shadows clung to her spirit. Was it naive to think she could compete? Was the world still interested in a single mother with a turbulent past? Tossing the brush onto the countertop, she buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed by the weight of expectation, both external and internal. It was a pivotal moment, one where she realized that the authenticity of her experience was her greatest asset.
The jagged edges of her life shaped her vision, transforming pain into purpose. Meanwhile, Michael faced an entirely different crucible. Every interaction in the high-powered boardrooms felt increasingly hollow. He sat through endless meetings, grappling with the looming threat of exposure, increasingly envious of Sarah's reinvention. She was rediscovering purpose through the very art he had forsaken, while he spiraled deeper into a vortex of superficial success. She confronted her demons with paint, while he dodged his behind polished shields and tailored suits. On their next scheduled meeting, the dynamic shifted unexpectedly. Instead of diving into performance metrics and strategic divides, Sarah revealed her plans to showcase her artwork. The vulnerability in her voice sliced through the facade that Michael had built. While speaking of her dream, an exhibition highlighting single parents, he marveled at how one woman could ignite a spark of ambition he thought was extinguished in himself. "That's incredible," he said, surprised at the surge of genuine enthusiasm bubbling within him. "Have you thought about how to promote it?" The question hung in the air, subtly ricocheting off the defenses Sarah had erected. Would she dare hinge the potential of her dream on another's counsel, especially considering his world? Still, she pulled herself up. "I'm working on that. I guess I could use guidance, just like you." It was a profound revelation for both. Sarah required support to navigate her burgeoning passion, while Michael craved authenticity to navigate his perilous reality. A new thread of possibility began to weave between their lives, one that promised more than mere survival. Both now stood at the precipice of transformation, the paths to their futures intermingling in an unexpected alliance. Yet even as hope glimmered ahead, old fears lurked in the wings, waiting to pounce. Michael's upward battle against impending scandal and Sarah's quest for validation from the art community were only just beginning. Undeterred, they both resolved to tackle their futures together. As they strategized, a shadow loomed. The specter of Michael's past was on the verge of resurfacing. Would their entwined destinies withstand the storm that was approaching? The moment of confrontation was edging closer, and as they worked, the clock incessantly ticked on, holding their fates in its relentless grasp. The rustle of canvases and the smell of turpentine filled Sarah's small living room as dawn kissed the horizon. She had pushed her fears into a corner, embracing her artistic voyage with a newfound determination. Each painting she crafted seemed to shimmer with the essence of her struggle and her aspirations. Yet even the euphoria of creation could not fully mask her underlying uncertainty. That morning, as she braced herself for the day, the ache of self-doubt tightened its grip again like an unruly vine. What if her work didn't resonate? What if potential buyers dismissed her as just another amateur? The weight of expectation seemed almost palpable, creeping into her thoughts. But instead of surrendering to these shadows, she decided to confront them. With an unexpected sense of resolve, she picked up her phone and called the only gallery in town known for supporting local artists.
She had seen exhibitions filled with vibrant pieces reflecting raw emotions, and she yearned to find her place among them. As she exchanged pleasantries with the curator, anticipation tingled in her fingers. "Do you have any upcoming exhibitions?" Sarah asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm working on my first series and would love the opportunity to showcase my work." "Yes, we do have an opening next month. We often highlight new talents. Can you send me some images?" Her heart raced. She hadn't anticipated the conversation to turn so quickly into actionable steps. After thanking the curator, Sarah sat still for a moment, piecing her emotions together. This was a pivotal step, not just for her art, but for her own personal recognition. She reveled in the thrill of taking control, each tiny victory reshaping her long-neglected sense of self-worth. As weeks advanced, Sarah filled her days with vibrant colors and feverish strokes, enamored with the way her identity began to crystallize with every masterpiece completed. The exhibition loomed closer, and she began to grapple with more than just her confidence. Now her heart bore the weight of practicality. Would her paintings truly capture the complexity of single parenthood, her lived experiences, and resonate with others? She sought solace in her nightly reflections, standing before the canvas as she pondered how her vibrant strokes might convey a message of resilience and hope. The juxtaposition of color and chaos mirrored her life, offering a deeper interpretation of struggle and triumph. It was a connection she felt obligated to make in each piece. Others needed to feel what she felt. Meanwhile, Michael was in a different battle against the faceless threats of his own making. The recent meetings had taken a toll, pressing him further into introspection. No glint of ambition remained in the high-stakes game that had once thrilled him. Rather, it was a battle against anxiety and fear of discovery. But Sarah's drive stirred something dormant within him. The respect he felt for her persistence was infectious, nudging him into uncomfortable realizations about his own life. On one fateful afternoon, unable to stay away from her emerging potential, he found himself at her doorstep. Observing her in her creative space, surrounded by color and chaos, he felt a blend of admiration and a potent seed of envy. Suddenly, their dynamics shifted again. It wasn't just about professional guidance for Sarah or seeking reassurance for himself. Their journeys had become interdependent.
"Maybe it's time I rediscovered what I've lost," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. His self-accusation lingered in the air, laden with the tension of his internal battles. This unexpected vulnerability connected them further, igniting an energy he hadn't felt in years. "What's stopping you?" Sarah challenged, her artistic fervor spilling over into their exchange. Michael felt her resolve seep into his bones, spurring him to recognize that perhaps he could reach for authenticity too, particularly in a world that consistently pushed him away from it. As they unwrapped layers of each other's aspirations and struggles, the unseen weight of the specter from Michael's past seemed to deepen. Tensions rose as they planned and crafted strategies, both in danger of being shaken by truths they'd rather keep hidden. With potential breakthroughs and fraught realities looming above, the clock ticked on relentlessly, and the stakes heightened for both. Just as a hint of clarity emerged, Michael's phone buzzed unexpectedly. An unfamiliar name flashed on the screen. His heart sank, knowing full well it bore the answer to the unspoken question. Would both of their aspirations survive untouched, or would the truth of his past shatter their fragile alliance? The tension in Sarah's small studio was palpable as she prepared her pieces for the upcoming exhibition. Each canvas hung like a crucial piece of her soul, waiting to be unveiled, a piece of herself she wasn't sure she was ready to share. The impending reality of showing her work publicly ignited a fiery blend of excitement and trepidation within her. Days softened into a blur of vibrant color and frantic brushstrokes. As she worked, her thoughts oscillated between the hope that her art would touch someone and gnawing anxieties about judgment. While she poured her essence into each painting, doubt lingered, whispering insidious questions about her worth and purpose. What if they don't understand? What if I'm just pretending?
Amid the chaos of creativity, Michael's unexpected admission echoed in her mind, urging her to face her own vulnerabilities. The comforting warmth of connection they had shared afforded her an avenue of support, yet it didn't shield her from the cold winds of insecurity. She had long buried the parts of herself that craved validation and recognition. This exhibition was not merely about showing her art, it was a reckoning, a bold statement that she existed beyond the confines of her responsibilities and fears. Late one night, while her hands stained with thin layers of paint, she found herself reflecting on her journey into artistry. The stark realities of single parenthood often threatened to encapsulate her, but these creations blossomed as her liberation. Would revealing this side of herself force others to confront their perceptions of her? Could she bear both the accolades and the criticisms? The day of her exhibition finally arrived, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and uncertainty. She meticulously arranged her paintings, each stroke a meditation on her struggles and victories. As people began to filter into the gallery, narration transformed into applause, admiration feeling tantalizingly within reach. Yet a knot tightened in her stomach when she caught glimpses of familiar faces. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers stared at her creations, dissecting the stories behind their vibrant hues. Michael appeared as if sent by Providence, standing at a distance, observing her with an intensity that made her heartbeat quicken. She realized that her journey mirrored his, a desire to break free from the shackles of expectation and fear. In his eyes, she saw not envy, but a simmering respect, igniting a flame of determination within her. As the evening progressed, Sarah moved from one group to another, discussing her art. This piece, she gestured to a particularly vibrant canvas, represents the chaos of motherhood, the range of emotions we face. It's beautiful and terrifying all at once. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was unmistakable strength behind her words. Each explanation felt like a small, liberating act, a declaration of her place in the world. But then she faced a palpable challenge. A potential buyer's dismissive comments shrunk her confidence momentarily. "It's just color splashed on a canvas, dear." For a split second, Sarah felt the air around her constrict. The vulnerability of sharing herself so intimately throbbed painfully. But instead of retreating, something within her surged. She took a step forward, compelled to confront the stigma wrapped around her work with newfound grit. Art is not merely aesthetics, it's transformative. It opens dialogues about the experiences we often hide. I challenge you to see more. As she spoke these words, something shifted, not just in her, but in those around her. She refused to shrink under scrutiny. Rather, she stood tall, reflecting her vibrant spirit back into the room. Later, sitting beside Michael, she felt both exhausted and exhilarated. They shared laughter and honest conversations, peeling back the layers of their lives. It was in those exchanges that Sarah recognized her growth. She had transformed from a passive observer of her potential to an active participant in her narrative. As the evening drew to a close, Michael leaned closer, his voice low and heavy with meaning. "I've admired your courage tonight, but I'm beginning to think you might just inspire me to confront my own fears." The air crackled with anticipation, and Sarah caught a glimpse of what their intertwined journeys might hold. Could they both learn from one another, rising from the ashes of their insecurities? Her heart quickened at the thought, and the dim glow of the gallery seemed to pulse with promise. They were teetering at the precipice of something monumental. The time had come to face the unmade decisions haunting them both. As anticipation swelled, Michael's phone buzzed insistently again, and they exchanged a look. Was it a friend seeking solace, or a specter from his past beckoning with repercussions? The evening was far from over. The vibrant noise of the gallery faded into the background for Sarah as she leaned into the momentary silence with a mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. Michael's near whisper lingered in her ears like a challenge, urging her to pull back the curtain not just on her art, but on her heart. She could feel it, a coiled energy ready to unspool its potential if only she had the courage to seize it. In that charged glance they shared, she sensed the weight of expectations, both his and her own. The pulse of her determination intensified, and she wondered how to harness this newfound strength moving forward. The art world could be unforgiving, and yet amid the uncertainty there was clarity. This was more than an exhibit. It was her declaration of independence from the self-doubt that had choked her creativity for far too long. As people filtered out, laughter and chatter dissipating, Sarah knew she had to maintain this momentum, even as the thrill ebbed away. Michael was still beside her, his presence anchoring amidst swirling distractions. "I want to talk more," he said, a hint of something deeper textured in his voice. "This evening it was a turning point for both of us, wasn't it?" It felt like an invitation not just to engage, but to embark on this journey of self-discovery together. But Sarah hesitated. Did she dare to rely on him for her growth? The notion of leaning on someone else had been foreign to her, something she had steered clear of since her life took a sharp turn into single parenthood. Yet paradoxically, she felt that she could fortify her ambitions with his support. "Let's meet next week," she proposed, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. "I want to talk about our next steps. I need to speak about my work, how I can continue to grow." Their eyes met, and Michael nodded, a shared understanding zipping through the air as they solidified their plans. He would push her to confront her aspirations and fears head-on, just as she hoped he could find the strength to tackle his. Could this kind of collaboration shift their perspectives completely? As the gallery's doors closed behind their departing guests, Sarah sensed that her next phase of evolution awaited her. This wasn't merely about art. It was about weaving her identity with resilience and ambition. In the days that followed, the adrenaline of the exhibition fueled her. She swam through her daily responsibilities with renewed fervor, balancing her role as a mother and artist. Every queasy doubt she had faced in the past began to recede, coaxed away by the embers of excitement. Even when fatigue pressed against her, there remained a steadfast inner voice. This was her time to thrive. The afternoon sun blazed through her studio window, igniting her paintings with a fierce glow. As she lifted her brush, each strike felt deliberate, showcasing not just her techniques, but her lived experiences. Instead of merely replicating emotions, she began to infuse her work with narratives that were raw and honest. Each canvas flourished with life, a testament to her evolution. Yet in the back of her mind, shadows hovered, doubts tethered to insecurities. Would this transformative journey be consistent? Would she stumble when faced with criticism or failure? Would she have the resolve to stand back up again and again? On the day of their planned meeting, Sarah stood before her reflection, mentally rehearsing her intentions. She needed to break through the barriers of complacency that had stymied both her artistry and ambitions. Gritting her teeth, she wondered if she was truly ready to embrace the unknown life ahead, a life possibly full of fear, excitement, and tumultuous growth. When Michael arrived at her space, she felt an inexplicable tension hang between them. They each carried unspoken words, expectations clashing with aspirations, igniting the air with a sense of palpable potential. It was then she realized the moment of truth was upon them both. Would they use their vulnerabilities as wings, or allow them to be shackles? As they settled into the discussion, she could feel the gravity of that choice pushing against them. With a deep breath, Sarah prepared to share not only her art, but the weighty emotions tied to it, unsure of how Michael would respond. In that charged moment, the correct articulation of her vision felt like a high-stakes game. Would this conversation be the catalyst for transformation, or would it pull them both into the depths of their fears? Sarah's heart raced, and the stakes felt infinitely higher than any previous moment in her life. The arena had shifted. It was no longer just about her creations, but rather a raw exploration of identity, ambition, and the depths of vulnerability. "Let's talk about who we really are," she started, her voice firm, yet trembling at the edges. The words hung in the air like a melodious challenge, reverberating through the studio. Sarah felt them seep into her bones, invigorating her with both a sense of purpose and a hint of dread. She had spent years molding her failures into an armor, and now she was prepared to let it slip away. Her heart beat fiercely against her chest as she clutched the edge of the table. Michael's eyes widened, his expression a mix of curiosity and admiration. "What do you mean?" he prompted gently, inviting her deeper into the labyrinth of her own thoughts. His calm demeanor bolstered her courage. I want to peel back the layers, my insecurities, my aspirations."
I'm trying to forge my identity through my art, but I fear it's shackled to the past. I need to strip away the hesitation that has kept me from creating authentically. Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on, driven by the brewing storm of her emotions. Michael leaned forward, his interest palpable. "What are you afraid of?" With the question hanging, a gallery of insecurities danced in her mind. The fear of rejection, the disappointment of her peers, the looming judgment of the audience. What if I'm not good enough? What if my best efforts aren't enough to break through the noise? She admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, absorbing her confessions. Admitting those fears is the first step towards conquering them. What if we turn this idea of vulnerability into a strength? Together, we can sketch the raw narratives that make us who we are. The world doesn't just want to see art, it wants to connect with experience. The realization struck her then. He had reframed her fears into a challenge, a canvas to fill with authenticity. That moment shifted something within Sarah. She could transform her vulnerability into a weapon, a tool of expression rather than an obstacle. "Okay," she breathed out cautiously. "Let's outline it. What does that look like? What is our first step?" Michael grinned, a spark igniting within his own reservoir of creativity. "Let's co-create an exhibition, one that captures our journeys. Your story, my story, what we've done, where we've struggled." He paused, the gravity of the idea settling in. "Let's rise to the challenge together." In that instant, fear washed away, replaced with a rush of excitement. The notion of collaboration aroused a fusion of ambition and accountability. She would not stumble alone, they would take each step together. "I want to include my struggles, the moments that tried to break me, and I want to do it fearlessly." Michael's expression softened, revealing that shared vulnerability that had initially drawn them together. "Then that's it. We create from that discovery. The raw, unfiltered truth will resonate with people. Trust in that. We have to lay ourselves bare." As they began brainstorming ideas, images, feelings, memories, the energy shifted. Each stroke of a suggestion compelled her to embrace a more profound honesty within her work. No longer confined by expectations, she could express herself as she truly was. Yet there remained an undercurrent of anxiety. The tension of revealing these intimate narratives frightened her. Would it resonate? Would she expose too much? Amid the exhilaration charged within the studio, doubts began to surface like dark clouds. But she pushed those thoughts aside. This was her moment. She could either embrace it wholly or shrink back once again. Perhaps each revelation would serve as affirmation, not just of her artistry, but of her very being. As they crafted their vision, a connection blossomed between Sarah and Michael, framing a potential partnership that felt as innovative as it was liberating. But she sensed an impending clash. What would happen when she faced the negative feedback she dreaded? Could she withstand the pressure of external judgment, the unvarnished truths of their stories unveiled? With each passing moment, she felt the rush of impending confrontation spill into her thoughts like wildfire. "And if it fails?" she asked softly, voicing her hidden fears. Michael paused, his gaze piercing into her. "Then we learn, we grow, but we do it together."
His words ignited something fierce within her, a resolve to face not just her own fears, but the fear of failure for both of them. Together, she echoed, realization settling in like dust motes in the sunbeam. She would have to embrace her fears, or they would define her. With that shared commitment, Sarah felt a crystalline determination crystallize within. They were on the brink of something extraordinary, but the looming uncertainties remained. What would their collaborative vulnerability demand of her, and how deeply could she delve into her truths without losing herself? She didn't know yet, but that uncertainty also felt exhilarating. The stakes were rising, and she was ready to take that leap into the unknown. As they sketched their plans, a new fire ignited in her soul, scattering doubt and paving the way for the realization of her most authentic self. The journey ahead would not be easy. Would her resolve crumble when faced with the complexities of their revelations? As dawn broke over the city, a new wave of determination swept through Sarah, pulling her from the depths of uncertainty into the bright possibility of her artistic dreams. She awoke feeling refreshed, yet anxious about the ambitious endeavor ahead. The desolate patches of doubt began to stir in her mind, but she found the courage to silence them, at least momentarily. She brewed a pot of strong coffee, letting the aroma permeate her small studio. Seen through the haze of early morning light, the space felt more alive, a cocoon of creativity waiting to erupt. She yearned to transform it into a sanctuary of vulnerability, a place where their stories could breathe and thrive. Today was the day they would begin mapping the exhibition. Her relapses into fear, Michael's quiet battles, all unfurling like the petals of a blooming flower. As she prepared her materials, a sudden weight pressed down on her. The fear of judgment loomed like a phantom, reflecting the insecurities she had so fiercely battled against. Was she truly ready to let others see her wounds? To draw lines and shapes that conveyed the fragility wrapped in strength? The door creaked open, and Michael entered, radiating enthusiasm. "Are you ready?" His eyes shone with anticipation, oblivious to the tempest brewing within her.
"I think so," she replied, forcing a smile, but her heart raced, her pulse pounding against her temples. "But what if people don't get it? What if we lay ourselves bare and it's nothing more than a spectacle to them?" Michael studied her with intent focus. "Art isn't about being understood by everyone," he said softly. "It's about being true to your expression. Do you feel like you're expressing that truth?" No. The crushing thought settled into her chest like lead. "Not yet. I'm still holding back," she admitted, voice unsteady. "What if my truth isn't enough?" "Every truth matters, Sarah," he reassured, letting his words linger between them. "You don't measure worth by the applause or approval of others. You measure it by how it feels to you." His perspective offered a mental reprieve. Slowly, she let her walls soften. "Okay," she breathed, adopting that perspective. "Let's start by putting our vulnerabilities on the table, literally." Together, they began creating a visual map of their stories. Each note, doodle, and color represented shards of their pasts, overlapping like intricate spiderwebs, delicate yet tenacious. Sarah felt the tension in her shoulders dissolve as the canvas began to reflect her inner tumult. Instead of shying away from her insecurities, she leaned into them, infusing her brushstrokes with raw emotions and experiences. Yet amid this artistic flow, shadows of doubt flickered. Would the intertwining narratives resonate? What if they both poured their souls into this and it failed to connect? She felt the pressure mounting, blurring her clarity. "What's happening?" Michael asked gently, noticing her sudden stillness. "You've gone quiet." "I'm just—" she hesitated, picking her words carefully. "What if they see my pain but can't see a way forward? What if I project my struggles and that's all they take away?" "Then you've done your job," he replied firmly, his expression unwavering. "You don't need to provide a resolution for everyone's journey. Just being honest is enough."
His confidence began to pierce the fog of her worry, sowing the seeds of resilience. As they resumed their work, sparks of creativity ignited between them, infusing their ideas with a sense of urgency. Each layer built not only upon their narratives, but also upon a profound commitment to each other, encouraging and challenging one another to step further into the light. Moments turned into hours, and before long the studio was alive with vibrant colors blooming across the canvas. Yet, as they stood back to admire their progress, an undeniable sense of foreboding emerged. She would eventually need to face the scrutiny of the outside world. The question loomed large. Was she truly prepared to withstand the reactions of an audience that might not understand her vision? "Sarah, are you with me?" Michael's voice pierced her thoughts. "Absolutely," she finally replied, though uncertainty still resonated within her. Looking at their collaborative work, she felt the passion of creation coursing through her veins. Among the splashes of color and raw feelings, there were discoveries of personal strengths revealing themselves, like flowers breaking through the asphalt. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but she felt invigorated by the opportunity for growth. As doubt subsided momentarily, a fresh wave of anticipation surged. Would she emerge stronger, richer in experience when they finally unveiled their work? In the thrilling uncertainty that wrapped around them, a question arose. How deep could her exploration go, and what would it ultimately demand of her spirit? The answer lied just beyond the horizon, waiting for her to grasp it, if only she was brave enough to continue. The studio buzzed with a strange blend of excitement and simmering trepidation. Sarah stared at the evolving canvas, its vibrant chaos reflecting the tempest within her mind. Each stroke was a dialogue with her fears, but impending judgment loomed like a thundercloud, threatening to douse the fragile flame of her newfound confidence. "Do you remember the first time we painted together?" Michael's voice interrupted her thoughts. He was gazing at a particularly expressive section of their work, the colors bursting forth in uncontrolled energy. "We were just kids then. Look how far we've come." His nostalgic smile momentarily eased the knot in her stomach. "Yeah, we were so unafraid back then. I wish I could tap into that." She sighed, her gaze never leaving the canvas. "Sometimes I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss." "You've got to jump, Sarah. Trust that your wings will catch you." His encouragement was unwavering, yet the chasm of self-doubt widened in her heart. The fears surfaced with a piercing clarity. What if she was only capable of fleeting moments of brilliance? What if the abyss swallowed not only her work, but her identity as an artist? It was easier to liken her creative efforts to that of a child's play, but now the stakes had shifted dramatically. This exhibition was more than just a collection of colors. It was a raw exploration of identity, struggle, and resilience. Each brushstroke was asking for her unguarded truth, and the fear of exposure gnawed at her with tenacity. "Okay, let's keep going," she finally decided, shaking off the hill of hesitation. "Let's dig deeper. You're right, I can't hold back." As they continued, the flow of ideas transformed into a torrent. The two became engrossed in an artistic dialogue, a reciprocal exchange of vulnerabilities and hopes. Sarah found herself drawn to the patterns in their work, weaving a narrative that challenged her to acknowledge both the light and shadow of her journey. Mixed in with her colors was early childhood joy, the sting of loneliness, and the persistent whisper of resilience. It was messy, but real. Yet the specter of an audience still hovered, whispering accusations of inadequacy. "What if it turns into a pity party?" she asked aloud, her voice strained. "What if they see us and only feel discomfort instead of connection?" Michael turned, looking her directly in the eye. "What if they see the humanity in it? You can't control their reactions, but you can control your honesty. That's where your power lies." His words ignited something dormant within her. "You're right," She straightened up, a flicker of determination shooting through her. I need to embrace what this is. It's not about perfection, it's about authenticity. With renewed vigor, she grabbed a brush and dipped it into a bold crimson, allowing herself to release a loosed tension. In that moment, each stroke became a catharsis, an act of reclaiming her space, her voice. Hours slipped by like grains of sand. The walls of the studio bore witness to their evolution. The remnants of self-doubt were fading, though still present, now challenged by her resolute spirit. As she started to layer her colors over the raw, emotional sketches, she began to discover hidden talents, the ability to convey profound truths through abstract expressions, something she previously felt was beyond her grasp. What if we displayed a snippet of our processes alongside the final piece? She proposed suddenly, eyes brightening at the idea. Not just the finished products, but also the struggle we went through to create them. Michael's eyes lit up. That could invite viewers into our journey. They won't just see the finished piece, they'll see the heart behind it. The notion wrapped around her like a warm cloak. This was a pivotal shift, a revelation that could deepen their connection with the audience. By unveiling not only their successes, but also their battles, they could transform vulnerability into strength. An honest narrative could bridge the gap between artist and viewer. But deep within her, a new question simmered, one that pierced deeper than the previous doubts. Could she truly embrace the rawness of this journey? Was she prepared to lay her inadequacies bare before strangers, risking their judgment for the sake of authenticity? And thus, with her heartbeat echoing in the stillness of the studio, the anticipation surged again. Each creak of the floorboards became alive with possibility, revealing layers of her identity she had yet to confront fully. With their dreams entwined on the canvas, what other truths awaited her discovery as they prepared for the leap into the unknown? As days bled into nights in the studio, Sarah's resolve was both exhilarating and exhausting. She felt like a marionette in a play of her own making, strings pulled by the unyielding demands of her soul. Each brushstroke held weight, not just color, but parts of her life. Yet the question lurked like a shadow. Was she ready to unveil the underbelly of her artistic process alongside her finished work? Her studio became a sanctuary of discovery, every corner holding remnants of her past and hints of her potential. Sarah began to journal her thoughts, poring over pages that mirrored the chaos on canvas. The mundane life events transformed into tales, lessons learned from failures, echoes of laughter, the pangs of rejection. It was exhilarating to document these fleeting memories, yet a chasm of fear widened. How much of herself could she truly expose? One afternoon, the sunlight poured through the studio windows, casting a warm glow. As she mixed new colors, Sarah started to weave elements into her painting that spoke of her insecurities, brushstrokes that trembled with raw honesty, and hues that danced between despair and hope. Each layer became representative of a narrative arc, the innocence of youth mingled with the bitter reality of adulthood. It embraced her evolution, but still the nagging self-doubt crept back in. What if they think I'm inadequate? She whispered to herself, frustration tightening her chest. Each time she began to step beyond her comfort zone, the voice echoed louder. Michael, sensing her retreat, stood beside her. "Remember when we got our first critique back in art class?" he ventured. "The feedback felt like a bullet at first, but it taught us. It became fuel." His tone struck a chord. Instead of shying away from criticism, perhaps there was strength in confronting it head-on. What if I wrote about that critique, how it hurt but also propelled me, she thought. Taking a deep breath, Sarah grabbed a new canvas. This would be different, a blend of the finished product and the stories that birthed it. As her brush skated across the surface, she captured not just beauty, but the struggle to attain it. The rhythm of her strokes grew furious, unapologetic. each color a memory, each swirl a lesson. When she invited Michael to collaborate on a piece that would embody raw honesty, he instantly aligned with her vision, his enthusiasm infectious. Together, they painted not only for themselves, but for anyone who might gaze upon their work. This time, the weight of their truths became liberating. They worked late into the night, laughter fracturing the silence that once held Sarah captive with her fears. "Imagine it," she said, the sparkle in her eye reigniting with passion. "What if we invite our audience to share their own stories, to connect through vulnerability?" "Absolutely," Michael replied, his conviction bolstering hers. "It's an art piece, but also an experience. They'll see that they're not alone, and neither are we." Hope flared within her, but as she returned to the canvas the following day, doubt played a familiar tune. Could she fully embrace her vulnerabilities? Could she lay bare her artistic journey without expecting judgment? The tension hung thick, juxtaposed against her evolving work. Would they see the heart of the journey, or would the honesty frighten them away? Determined, she pushed the brush across the canvas. Each stroke transformed trepidation into a mission, her vision sharpened and her identity solidifying with each pass. But as she neared completion, a new uncertainty threaded itself into her consciousness. Would they find it relatable? Was authenticity enough to build bridges, or would it instead expose her to harsher scrutiny? This brewing storm of questions exhaled a heaviness, reminding her that leap into the unknown wasn't solely about the art. It was about her, the person behind the brushes. And there, with her heart racing, she prepared for a reckoning, knowing the moment of truth was drawing closer. Could she confront her fears, or would she retreat back into the safety of silence, just as she stood on the precipice of revealing her heart? The day of the exhibition arrived, bright and bustling, a cacophony of emotions swirling within Sarah as she entered the gallery. The anticipation buzzed around her like static electricity. It was a convergence of dreams and fears. This showcase was not merely about colorful canvases. It was a window into her soul, an exhibition of her life told through the language of art. Sarah took a deep breath, her chest filled with an exhilarating blend of fear and excitement. She glanced at the paintings carefully arranged around the walls, each piece a manifestation of her struggles, reflections on motherhood woven with threads of inspiration. The stories behind them flickered in her mind, yet the blinking cursor of self-doubt loomed ominously. What if, the thought remained heavy in her heart, what if it fell flat? As the doors opened, sunlight spilled into the room, cascading over the pieces and igniting their vibrant hues. Faces began to fill the space, curious onlookers, friends and fellow artists. She caught a glance of Michael across the room, his confident stance acting as a comforting balm for her nerves. He nodded encouragingly, reminding her that bravery lay not in absence of fear, but in the choice to confront it. Guests gathered around her paintings, their animated discussions creating an energizing atmosphere. With each glance, her heart thudded. Whispers of appreciation wrapped around her, staving off the shadows of uncertainty. Yet amidst the chatter, the looming question in her mind remained. Would they truly understand her? As she interacted with attendees, Sarah began to weave her narrative into the fabric of her art. "This piece," she gestured to a large canvas drenched in fiery reds and soothing blues, "represents my journey through motherhood, a melange of chaos and beauty." The more she shared, the more she recognized the connection between her story and their reactions. Then the moment came. A woman stepped forward, eyes welling with emotion. "This painting resonates deeply with me. I see my own struggles mirrored in your work," she said, her voice choked with gratitude. "Thank you for being brave enough to share it." The words pierced through Sarah's insecurities, igniting an ember of pride that spread through her chest. She realized then that vulnerability was not a weakness, but rather a bridge to understanding, transforming her worries into fuel for her resolve. As the night unfolded, Conversations blossomed, stories intertwined, and laughter erupted. People laughed, shared tales, and reached out to her, expressing how her art touched a chord in them. She felt a palpable shift within. She had laid her fears bare, and in return she was met with appreciation, not all the judgment she had braced for. Throughout the evening, she and Michael pivoted from one guest to another, their energies intertwining like vibrant colors on a canvas. Together they navigated discussions, each providing support and encouragement to the other, reinforcing their commitment not only to their art, but to their alliance, a partnership forged in shared truths. In a poignant moment, Michael took Sarah aside for a brief reprieve from the hustle. "You did it," he said softly, his eyes gleaming with pride. "You were phenomenal tonight. Look how many lives you've already impacted by just being your authentic self." Her heart swelled. Not only had she showcased her art, but she had also dismantled the walls she had built around her vulnerabilities. She had embraced the fear of exposure, and it had resonated. Her story connected with others in profound ways. Sarah had metamorphosed into the person she'd always wanted to be, an artist who moved beyond adequacy into the realm of authenticity and impact. By the end of the night, as the guests took their leave and the gallery began to quiet, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment wash over her. No longer a woman haunted by doubt, she stood strong, her identity now intertwined inviolably with her creative expression. "Thank you," she whispered to Michael, gripping his hand in a gesture of solidarity. "This journey was about so much more than art. It was about finding myself, finding my worth." He smiled, nodding knowingly. And as they left the gallery, the dawn was breaking, etching the skyline in hues reminiscent of her creations. "Together we can achieve more," she affirmed, exhilaration surging anew within her. They were ready to turn the page on their next chapters, but for now she cherished this moment, the moment of victory over fear. This transformation stood as a testament to what dedication, courage, and vulnerability could birth, a life reclaimed through art, a future brightened by authenticity. Don't miss out on future emotional stories of transformation. Subscribe immediately to our channel to keep journeying through these powerful narratives. If you found this conclusion satisfying, leave a like now to feed the algorithm and grow our community of supporters. We want to hear from you. Comment your thoughts and theories about the ending. Your reactions matter. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting conclusion. They deserve to discover stories of overcoming just like you.